Welcome to this session on equity, empowerment, and agency. I'm Tia McNair. I'm the Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Student Success at AAC&U. And to get us started, I thought we would just watch a simple video.
Hello. Welcome to Energy Conservation Incorporated.
Thank you. I really hope to get a job here.
Well, let's get started with your interview. What do you think are your greatest strengths?
My greatest strengths.
Yes, your greatest strengths.
What are my answer choices?
What do you mean?
My answer choices. You know, A, B, C, or D.
There are not any answer choices.
Oh, I understand. In that case, I choose C.
You choose C?
Yes, I choose C. My 5th grade teacher told me to always choose C when I did not know the answer.
Oh, it sounds like your 5th grade teacher really prepared you for your future. Moving on then. This job will require you to write proposals about energy conservation. Are you a strong writer?
Yes. My teachers always told me that I write very good stories. I also like to write poetry.
Well, we will not need you to write poetry or stories. We will need you to write proposals regarding energy conservation.
Proposals. Is that like writing a persuasive essay?
Sure.
In that case, yes. I am very good at writing proposals. Every year in school, my teachers made me write a proposal regarding school uniform policies. I also wrote some proposals about banning cell phones in school. Would you like to read them?
No, I would not like to read them. If you get a job here, you will need to write proposals about energy conservation. Your proposals will need to include basic mathematical equations as well as scientific research.
Wait.
What is wrong?
I am confused.
That is not very surprising.
You said I would have to include mathematical equations and scientific research in my writing.
Yes, that is what I said.
But that doesn't make sense.
What doesn't make sense?
Math, science, and writing. They are separate subjects. I don't know if I can incorporate math and science into my writing. They are all very different.
Well, if you work here, that is what you will have to do.
This job seems very difficult. I do not think my public education prepared me to work here.
Well, I have to agree with you. I have one more question for you though. Why did you think you were ever qualified to work here in the first place? Why are you looking around?
You asked me a question, and I do not know the answer. So, I am looking for someone to think pair share with.
There is no one for you to think pair share with.
Oh. In that case, I choose C.
I think I've heard enough. Thank you for coming in.
So why are we here this afternoon? You can see from the example from the video that our job as educators, when we talk about making excellence inclusive and we talk about equity and we talk about giving students agency, part of that is helping them understand the relevancy and the why and how to integrate their learning, because I'm pretty sure that wouldn't be any of your students, right? No, just look this way. We're all good. Oh, Pam says she chooses C. She's not going to answer. So what we're going to do this afternoon is we're going to have a conversation. We're going to prepare you for our discussions related to equity and empowerment and student agency. But just by a show of hands, and I like to do this when I start, how many of you believe in making excellence inclusive? Thank you. That's wonderful. Now, if I asked each and every one of you in this room what that means for making excellence inclusive in general education, how many different answers do you think I would have? And then let's count the people. Let's just start counting off. When we at AAC&U, we just finished our centennial year. We spent our centennial year focusing on the work that we have done in relationship to advancing inclusive excellence for all students, to making sure that all students have access to a high-quality liberal education, because we know that is what is going to prepare them for success, for life, for work, and for citizenship. And this afternoon, we're going to have conversations related to how you actually do that. But up on the screen, you can see some of the resources that we have released in relationship to helping you have the tools to help you drive the conversations on how you actually translate the theory of inclusive excellence into campus practice. Some of you are at tables that have these publications. Just so you know, they're online. A couple of them are online for free, especially this one, the Committing to Equity and Inclusive Excellence, the Campus Self-Study Guide. If you're at a table that does not have this, you can download it for free at AAC&U. The other publication that you may have on your table is our Step Up and Lead document. It's basically saying that we have a responsibility, a moral responsibility, a shared responsibility to make sure that all of our students, to ensure that all students have access to the type of learning that will prepare them for life, work, and citizenship. And then the other publications that are there is America's Unmet Promise, the Equity Imperative in Higher Education. The last one is our General Education Maps and Markers. You've heard some of our previous speakers talk about that. You heard Terry Rhodes and Gail Evans and Deborah Humphreys, they mentioned this. The work that we're doing and the core principles that you see up here in relationship to what a 21st century general education maps and markers, what does that look like? So I strongly encourage you to pick up that publication, because especially around the questions that we're going to deal with today around equity and helping students have agency and self-direction, we give you a guide. We give you prompts to start that conversation, those conversations on your campuses. So without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists this afternoon. And don't worry, I've told them that we're in an Ignite session. And they are going to be igniting you, exactly, with enthusiastic prompts for this afternoon's discussion. The first speaker is going to be Carla Davis Salazar. She is the Associate Dean of Undergraduate Studies at the University of South Florida. She is going to be followed by Pamela Scott Johnson, who is the Interim Dean of the College of Liberal Arts at Morgan State University. Then Ellen Reek is going to speak. She is the Professor of English at Arizona Western College. And then we're going to end with Peter, the soul male. Okay. He's Assistant Provost for Teaching and Learning at Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University, what we call Virginia Tech. So please join me and welcome my colleagues to the podium. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. It's wonderful to see a nearly full audience just like this morning, and so we appreciate that. My name is Carla Davis Salazar. I'm at the University of South Florida, as Tia just mentioned, and I'm joined by my colleague, Nicole West, who is the Assistant Director of something called the Global Citizens Project at the University of South Florida. And that'll be the focus of our talk and our presentations later on this afternoon. But the title of our session is Global Citizenship as a High-Quality and Equity-Focused Framework for General Education. And it's written as a statement, but we really want to put a question mark at the end of that. And that's really what we want to focus in on in our presentation and our discussion session later, because we think there's potential here. When at USF, we've been working on something called the Global Citizens Project for a few years now. For those of you who are in the southeastern region, it's our QEP. It's our Quality Enhancement Plan. And so we began implementing this past fall this 5-year plan to enhance student learning around this idea of global citizenship, and that's what our QEP is. And so we've had a lot of time to think about how to develop our students as global citizens, and always thinking about all of our students and how we can do that. And so one of the ways that we've immediately thought of course, was through general education, because that is the curriculum that reaches all of our students. And so we've been spending a lot of time thinking about the intersection between global citizenship and how we define it, and we'll talk about that a little bit, and then also of our existing general education curriculum and how we can bring those two things together to give a quality educational experience for our students. But then we have this third piece, and that when we were invited to join this session, it was the equity piece. It was had not been a central focus of our QEP or the Global Citizens Project, but because of this invitation, we've started to think about this idea. And so now we have this question of how do these three different things come together? How does global citizenship as a framework intersect with general education and potentially to create an equity-focused educational experience for all of our students? And so that's the question we want to explore in our sessions with you, because we don't have the answer. We think there's a potential there, and there's a couple different ways we've been thinking about it. One in terms of how a global citizenship framework, the kinds of students that we produce using a global citizens framework within general education, but then also the kinds of students that we attract and we engage in these kinds of experiences. And we have just initial preliminary data that's suggesting that we might be attracting a more diverse student, more diverse student groups with our global citizenship framework than we do, at least in the broader university. And so those are the kinds of issues we want to bring and talk with you about in our sessions today. It's interesting when you're thinking about general education and faculty engagement in particular. There's another challenge for us, and that is that our first QEP in 2005 was a complete revision of general education. And so then we say, okay, it's our second second QEP, we want to do global citizenship and we want to mess with general education again. And so we had that added little element and so we've already have our gen ed, what can we possibly do? So that's a little added element in there in terms of what we're doing to infuse global citizenship into a general education curriculum that we really didn't want to change too much. And so there's all these different moving parts that we're trying to bring together. And so we invite you to come and join us in this discussion. We have lots of pieces of advice in some respects and lots of question marks that we hope you can help us work out too as well. So please join us, and thank you very much.
That's okay. I'll just work without it. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm actually happy to see what I could see with my reading glasses, a half full room of people. I'm Pamela Scott Johnson. I'm from Morgan State University. The name of our session is I Am Because We Are. We'd like to give you a different perspective in terms of looking at equity and inclusive excellence and equity. For many, many years, Morgan State University, an historically black institution and minority-serving institution, has had expertise in serving underserved students. So many times people think of underserved students in terms of their ethnic background, but we also think of our students in terms of the socioeconomic background, their cultural background, their cultural motif. And as you think about who your students are, we want them to thrive in the particular environment. And how is it that students thrive, and who are they when they come to us so that we might help them thrive? So when we thought about this, I am because we are, let's think about who our students are. They come from environments where they work in groups and teams. They haven't come to us from environments where they've had their own rooms or where they worked solo or in isolation. And yet when they come to us in our institution, we say you must go off and work on your own in isolation, and then we're going to teach you how to collaborate. We offer a different perspective. That is, our students come to us with the intent of having a community, and each of you has thought about what that community looks like in your environment. But we want to approximate and reward the behavior that we want, which is individual accountability, not isolation and lone rangerness, if you will. And so from a collectivist standpoint, and from the perspective that we want students to gain greater awareness, we'd like to use an African-centered pedagogy for which to bring this self-awareness for our students. That is, when students come to us and they value community, they value working in teams already, we don't need to reteach them how to work in teams and how to value collaboration. We want to move them, we don't want to reward them being isolated. So you've seen the studies where African American and other students of color won't go to instructors to be able to talk about what they need? Why not build a general education program that actually provides students a context that not only respects who they are, but rewards the kind of behavior that we indeed want. So we invite you to our session. I have two of my colleagues here, Dr. Solomon Alau, our assessment guru and a colleague in the Department of Education, and Dr. Lisa Brown, who is in biology, and they've been doing a lot of curricular reform. What we're going to share with you are our tools for this kind of African-centered or culturally centered pedagogy that reminds students that they come with a level of contribution that is important to their own learning process. We want to move them from directed learning to a strategy that has them have more individual accountability for their learning, and we'll share with you the practices that we've engaged in for a long time, which we have a much more robust language to be engaged in, and we ask you to share those perspectives on how to engage the underserved student so that we can finally be able to serve the students to really be able to address the complex issues that only these students can be able to address in a world that is designed for them to take leadership. Thank you so much.
This is always the problem when you're at a conference, because now I want to go to her session and learn about African-centered pedagogies in the classroom. That sounds great. Good afternoon. My name is Ellen Reek, and I teach in the English department, and I also chair the General Education Curriculum Committee at Arizona Western College. Arizona Western College is in Yuma, Arizona, which is in the very... No way. That has never happened before. So the one person in the room who knows where Yuma is in the south. It's in the southwest corner of Arizona, right on the border with Mexico and California. Just for a sense of our closest metropolitan areas, San Diego is 3 hours to our west. Phoenix is about 3 hours to our northeast. So that's the closest we get to metropolitan areas right there. You've probably not heard, other than that gentleman right there, of Yuma, Arizona, except maybe for the movie 3:10 to Yuma. That may be it. That actually has some relevance to education in Yuma, Arizona, but you have to come to my session to find out what that is. One of the other distinctions that we boast is that we are the winter vegetable capital of the world. The world. We have billboards and everything. So if you had lettuce in your lunch today, in any part of your lunch today, then it likely came from Yuma. More to the point, and more to the point of my sessions this afternoon, it is likely picked by parents of students at Arizona Western College. That is entirely possible. We have a very large migrant student population. One of the things that we will talk about in the sessions today is some of the very successful models we have for supporting those students on our campus, many of which are grant funded, as you might imagine. I'll give you some quick statistics to put all of this in context. At AWC, 65% of our students are first-generation college students. 63% identify as Latino, and 31% enter at developmental levels. So that gives you kind of a picture of what our student population is and why we have challenges as well as opportunities at Arizona Western College, and that sort of drives the discussion today. Many of our students, I would say this too, if you want to, based on those statistics, you can imagine how exciting it is when students graduate, when they actually matriculate just with an associate's degree. I'm not even talking beyond that. So if you want to do something really exciting in May and have a good time and feel good about your role as a teacher in education in your community, come to AWC for a graduation. It is phenomenal to see the community turn out in support of these kids. We actually had to overcome the hurdle of 8th grade graduations in our community because there were many, many families who thought that was a huge celebration. So that's sort of where we're coming from. What I want to talk about today in the first session particularly is some of the things that we've done to get in the way of students being successful and never making it to that graduation point, and then some of the ways in which the research that's been done, and I was just saying to Tia, that research that AAC&U has done, and particularly research that she's been involved with as well more recently, has really shed a light on high impact practices, and we'll talk about what those are and some specifically in the workshop sessions, how those high impact practices impact specifically my population of students at Arizona Western College and underserved populations at a lot of your institutions as well. So it has only been recently that we've even looked at that. So it is incredible that we can now pull that data, those data apart and look at how those students are being affected. And here's the probably intuitive but still somewhat amazing information, and that is not only does that underserved population benefit equally with more traditional students, they in many ways extrinsically and intrinsically benefit more from some of those high impact practices. So what I'm going to be talking about, we've done some, as I said earlier to some table mates, we are continuing the reform of general education at AWC, and it's opened a door for some of these high impact practices at our campus, and so I'm going to be talking about that. Just a brief overview of how we've made some changes, how that opened the door, and then I'm going to look specifically at 3 projects. Just so you know, I decided the easiest way to do this was to create a website. So you've got a black and white handout. It never occurred to me, coming from my institution where they tell us, whatever you do, don't print in color. It never occurred to me that I could have had a color copy here on the table for you. Totally missed the boat. But the website is in color, so it'll be a colorful presentation during the first session where we'll walk through all of the resources on that site, and then you can all have access to that site and the resources that are available, links to assignments, all of those kinds of things. The affinity session is going to focus on specifically some of the areas and descriptors that have been identified in some of the work that Tia and her colleague Ashley Finley have put together, and so we're going to do take deeper looks at some of the ways in which our institutions are supporting students, and maybe some ways in which we can do a little bit better. So that is the goal. That is the goal for my first session, is really the overview and a rich discussion, and then further digging deeply in the affinity session. So thank you so much.
All right. Hello. Let's try that again. Hello. Oh, excellent. Much better. Much better. My name is Peter Doolittle. I'm from Virginia Tech. I now have Yuma on my bucket list, so I'm going to have to go do some traveling, and I'm not really into winter lettuce, but it'd be nice to go see it then. So, yeah, that'd be great. My session really looks at the nexus, if you will, of cognitive science, inclusive pedagogy, and agency. And having so many of you here all at once, I just can't resist putting you to work. So we're going to do an activity in 6 minutes. So you ready? Are you paying attention? Are you paying attention? Okay, good. I'm going to read you a series of words. All I want you to do is remember them. Okay? Don't write them down. Okay? Don't use your neighbor. Just remember them. You ready? Here we go. Rest. Tired. Awake, dream, snore, bed, eat, slumber, sound, comfort, wake, and night. Okay? Anytime we do anything in our class, any activity, whether it's informational or it's instructional, it's going to advantage some students and disadvantage others. And so the question is, from an inclusive pedagogy perspective, how do we take that into account? How do we teach in such a way that we're teaching to all students at once and not to the majority under one situation, and then we account for the others under some sort of separate pedagogical approach? So the whole idea with inclusive pedagogy is, how do we try to get them all the first time in a very proactive way? Okay, now, in your head, there's some rather predictable things going on. So when we talk about the idea of these words, how many of you started with a strategy to try to remember them? Okay. How many of you were just repeating them over and over and over as fast as you could? Okay, so the brute force is generally a bit of a challenge. There's 12 words. How many of you remember all 12? Okay, I'm seeing 0. So we're 0 for a few hundred. I'm going to give you a series of words, and then you just tell me if they were in the list. All right? Was the word ceiling in the list? Carpet? Chair? Car? Aardvark? Sleep? Shoes? Hair? What's the problem? Sleep wasn't in the list. All right. Yeah. So we'll talk about what just happened. Sorry about that. But also realize that just advantaged some of you and disadvantaged others of you. Come to my session. We'll talk more about that. Thanks.
Okay, so just tell me, we had the best Ignite session ever, right? That was pretty good. Yeah. That was so good. Thank you. Thank you to my colleagues. That was wonderful. So as we get ready to go off and to have these very thoughtful and provocative discussions this afternoon, a couple of things that I want to just say to you, and a couple of questions I want to raise, is that keep in mind as you're participating in these sessions, what does it mean? What does it mean for me to be an equity-minded practitioner or to be an equity-minded educator? What does that mean? And what does it mean for our campus to hold ourselves accountable for making excellence inclusive for all students? And then how do we translate that into practice? Deborah mentioned earlier in her opening, she talked about our research that we did, our member survey on where we are as an association from our 325 chief academic officers from representative campuses of our membership. And the reality is we have a lot of work to do in relationship to equity. As she said, and as I want to repeat right now, is that only 17% of those chief academic officers reported that they're even disaggregating data on student achievement of learning outcomes. And as Ellen talked about how informative the publication was, the publication focused on disaggregating data on high-impact practices. But we learned from this membership survey that only 31% of the campuses that responded are actually disaggregating data on high-impact practices. If we do not hold ourselves accountable, if we do not ask the critical questions, if we don't engage in inquiry, then we are going to leave some students behind. And that is not what we want to do when we talk about equity and empowerment and agency. So we want you to have deep, rich conversations, but more importantly, we want you to take it back to your campuses and implement the ideas that you hear this afternoon. And as we said in the previous sessions, on the previous Ignite sessions, these are not the only sessions that are going to be offered to you this afternoon. There are several others. We invite you to pick the session that's most appropriate to the work that you're doing. We will be around to answer and address any questions that you have. Before we do that, we do have a minute. Do you have any questions for us right now that we can take? You're just ready to jump into the sessions, aren't you? Right? You're ignited. You're on fire. That's right. Okay, so we're going to actually take a little bit of a break because we finished this session a little early, but that's okay because that gives you a chance to transition and to talk to your colleagues. Part of it is about networking. So the sessions will start at 2:45, I believe. Is that right? Great, wonderful. Thank you. See you then.